Godzilla, King of the Monsters is the third installment of the MonsterVerse following Godzilla 2014 and Kong Skull Island. It is the 35th Godzilla film and follows the titular character as he fights some monsters that claim dominance as the King of the Monsters, while some human characters are also trying to figure out how to stop him and the other monsters from causing mass destruction. The previous Godzilla film, directed by Gareth Edwards, wasn't a bad movie, but was hugely disappointing as a longtime fan of the franchise. My biggest problem with the movie were the dull characters minus Bryan Cranston and Ken Watanabe, the film cutting away from all the monster action until the third act, having mostly poor pacing, and Godzilla barely appearing in his own movie. However, I was really excited for this movie, mostly because it has Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah in it, and the trailers for it were epic. If I'm being honest, I was way more excited to see this movie than I was to see Avengers Endgame. After seeing this film, I can say that it's a flawed but enjoyable monster film. The best thing about Godzilla, King of the Monsters is all the incredible visual effects. This is a gorgeous looking film from start to finish, and all the designs for the kaiju are extremely well done. Godzilla's design is fantastic, and has so much detail put into him it's insane. But I also really love the redesigns for Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah. Mothra, even though she's not in the movie much, looks great, and her design is reminiscent of her look in Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All Out Attack, with a few new tweaks that make her stand out from her other incarnations in previous films. Rodan also looks superb, and is probably the best he's looked in the film besides his appearance in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. The best redesign in the film is by far Ghidorah. King Ghidorah looks outstanding, and I also love how they gave him more personality in his previous incarnations. Each of his three heads have a different personality, which I always feel like Toho wanted to do in previous films, but never could due to budget constraints and the fact that he was played by a guy in a rubber suit. All the effects in this movie are just top-notch, and is easily one of the best-looking Godzilla films to date. The action sequences in King of the Monsters are also incredibly awesome, and I would honestly say that this film has some of the best kaiju action ever put to film. Even though this film still cuts away from the action on occasion, it's mostly used to show the human characters they're in the midst of the kaiju's combat, and it works to show how devastating these monsters can be while fighting. A lot of the action gave me vibes of a modern-day adaptation of Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, and it was a total blast to sit through. I also must give major props to the sound design and sound mixing because it totally rocks. All the sounds that the kaiju make and all the things they destroy are incredibly loud and have a lot of impact to add to their threatening presence. The score by Bear McCreary is also very well done. I'm so satisfied that this movie decided to include classic themes like Godzilla's theme and Mothra's theme. That was one thing I felt was sorely missing from the 2014 reboot. McCreary does a great job reworking these classic themes, particularly Godzilla's, which sounds so grand and epic compared to the original theme song. The cinematography is also really well done, and there are many great shots of the monsters which showcase their size and power. Some of these shots are so good that I could see them as posters I put up in my room. With all the praise I've been giving Godzilla, King of the Monsters, it still isn't a perfect movie. My biggest gripe with this film is that the human characters aren't very good and are poorly written. Aside from Ken Watanabe, all the actors aren't really given anything interesting to do and are dull. Many of the Godzilla movies have forgettable human characters, but at least they have interesting stories going on around them and are giving something to do. For example, the characters in Godzilla Final Wars are hardly memorable, but at least their story makes up for it with them being genetic superhumans that fight aliens and even some of the kaiju. And there are examples in Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. None of the characters in that film are good either, but at least their story of having to protect a princess that is possessed by someone from Venus that perfectly predicts what the monsters will do is engaging. Here, they are either as dull as a rock, or serve only to spout exposition. Talented actors like Kyle Chandler, Vera Farmiga, Millie Bobby Brown, and Charles Dance are wasted, which is a real shame. Also, most of the dialogue is subpar, and most of the jokes in this film fall flat. My other gripe with this film is the lack of Mothra in it. With her being in so much of the promotional material, surprisingly she's not in the movie hardly at all, which disappoints me considering I'm a huge fan of the character, and I was really looking forward to seeing her a lot. There is even a huge chunk of this film where I forgot she was in it, which just shocks me. Overall, Godzilla King of the Monsters isn't perfect, but is an enjoyable monster film and an improvement over the first one. It didn't live up to my expectations as much as I wanted it to, but I still had a good time watching it. It made me feel like I was watching a remake of Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster and Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All Out Attack, mixed in with elements of Destroy All Monsters and even a tad bit of Godzilla vs. Destroya. I am really looking forward to Godzilla vs. Kong next year, since I think it's long overdue we got another film featuring the two best film monsters of all time. I think this film is a step in the right direction for the MonsterVerse. If we get more Godzilla movies, I hope we get to see some classic monsters like Mechagodzilla, Gigan, Anguirus, Destroya, or even some new kaiju we haven't seen before. Maybe we'll even get characters like Edera, Ebra, Megalon, Gabra, and Jet Jaguar at some point. Joking, of course. Also, can we get a crossover between Godzilla and Gamera at some point? That's the one crossover I think most monster movie fans, including me, want to see more than anything. I am giving Godzilla King of the Monsters a B.